Welcome to Think Like a Dog podcast, where we explore dog behavior and psychology-based training to help your dog achieve their full potential. Welcome back to Think Like a Dog podcast. And today we have a guest here with us, and we're really excited for this podcast because we get to talk about, different points of view and get more into different kinds of training. So we have here Easton with Millie on one end. So you're going to be listening to two voices. And then we also have Javier here with his wife. So why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit more about your business name, where people can find you on the social media platforms, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so again, my name is Javier, and I'm with Everyday Pack Leader. Our business name, it stems from the fact that our mission is to train everyday people to be a pack leader. Our goal is to not have clients for the rest of their lives. Yeah.
And I'm Nikki. I'm a little bit more behind the scenes with Everyday Pack Leader. And what's fun about how the business came about and kind of how the name came about too is that we had moved to LA for my job, and he was kind of starting over, and it was right at the beginning of COVID too. And so it was this weird pause where he was going to look for a job, and then there wasn't much out there. And I said, what better time to really think about what you really want to do, because he'd worked for nonprofits and he loved helping people, but he hadn't found a niche in that either that he was really passionate about. So we were in Long Beach, and we would be out walking around, and there was stray dogs everywhere, or just weird things would come up with dogs. And he always just knew what to do. It was really strange to me. One time we were walking our dog, and some little pit bull comes racing toward us full speed, barking, running as fast as he can. And us at the time, not really knowing that much about dog psychology. I mean, I just froze. I stepped in front of our dog and just froze. He just started walking straight toward the dog. I've never seen anything like it. And he got right up to the dog, and the dog stopped and rolled over on its back. And then he helped find its home. And I was like, how did you know how to do that? And he's like, I don't know. It just kind of came to me. And so that's why I was like, maybe you should be a dog trainer. You're really naturally good with dogs. And so that kind of led us down the path. And why we say Everyday Pack Leader, we were just people with dogs. We love dogs, and we learned dog psychology, and we were able to translate that into a successful dog training business and philosophy that we're really passionate about. And anybody can do that. If we can do it, anybody can do it.
I love that. I love that you guys actually started from a place of love and passion, and it came naturally to you. I feel like being a trainer and really being able to create a platform where people connect with you and they trust you with the relationship they have with their dogs, you have to have that passion. You have to be driven by passion, right? Because if you just go for it for the money perspective, or for just, not really coming from a place of love, people feel that, because it's all about a connection. And that's why when I first connected with Millie and her trainers, there had to be a connection there. I spoke to many trainers before I actually got to find her, and there wasn't a connection there. It was all about, here's a package. Let's start with this 10 sessions. Your dog's going to learn, sit down, stay, roll over, all these things. And it just didn't connect with me. I'm like, man, my dog that just got in a fight with my other dog, what I thought was about food reactivity at the time, it's like, this dog doesn't need treats. I don't want this dog to just know how to sit and roll over. I want to understand why that happened. I want to understand what got him to become so uncomfortable to where he had to feel like he had to protect himself. So when I talked to Millie about the dog psychology part of things, and it really connected with me. And that's why I think it's so awesome when I find other trainers that believe in the same, method of training. There's tons of different method of trainings. And I was just talking about this on Instagram, is I hate it when trainers discredit other trainers, because different things work for everybody. It's some things that you might say not work for a client, and that's fine. Some things Millie might say might not work for that client, and that's fine. Whatever works for you and your dog. And that's why I love dog psychology, because you guys are trying to understand the dog's needs. So you're not necessarily telling people it's my way or no way. You're sitting there and you're like, let's understand your dog and let's figure out what works for your dog. So I love your business name too, Everyday Pack Leader. Because it's
I
really
love
what you
it.
have to be, right? An everyday pack leader.
Yeah. I mean,
So
I think it's so cool too because you're focused obviously on the human, right? I mean, and every single person that you work with, I think when I've had this conversation with Easton many times. We actually had it yelling at each other the other day. I was yelling. She wasn't yelling. I just get really passionate sometimes. But when it comes to the person part of it, part of I think my favorite part of this job is trying to figure out what's going to be the thing that makes it click for that person. And it's going to be different for every single person. And then for some people, it's just never going to click. It's just, they're never going to want to do it. They're never going to want to put the work in. They're not going to be able to shift their perspective no matter what you say. But I think, when I was talking to Easton, one of our things is I don't think that it's her job to make the person do it. It's our job to find a way to get them to understand, but that's not going to be every single person. But I love that it's about even your business name. It's not necessarily about the dog. It's about the person. And I bet there's a ton of confidence building, a ton of teaching people that even though you can do it, they can do it too. And that's, I think, a big thing is that people will credit it to us. Like in sessions, they'll go, oh, well, it's because you're here, or, oh, it's because you're holding the leash. Yeah. Right. But I used to not know what I was doing too. I learned this is not, you can be a natural and it seems like you are, but this is also something that's very learned. You can absolutely learn it.
Totally. And we've kind of switched how we do, initial consultations with people, in that we really start with telling them how we see, dog training and dog psychology as part of that, in that, it's more like therapy than training, because you have a relationship ideally with your dog. And if there are behavioral issues that are coming up, it's because there's some kind of a breakdown in communication, or maybe the relationship didn't start on the right note. And so rather than coming in and training your dog, we're going to come in and we're going to kind of look at you and look at the dog and figure out where is that breakdown, and then what is the highest potential for this relationship, because all people are different and all dogs are different. And so, sometimes a certain person and a certain dog, their level of success is going to look differently. And so it's let's help you find that, rather than set some ridiculous standard that, now you feel like you have to meet. Maybe you can't.
Yeah, right. And then people will just give up because it's just such a crazy standard that's set. A lot of the times you hear it all the time in dog training, right? It's train the dog in front of you, which is 100% true, but also train the human that's in front of you as well. You have to come from a place of empathy, of yes. kind of recognizing what is this person's lifestyle, what can they change and what can they absolutely not change. What kind of relationship are they? A lot of people have seriously codependent and somewhat toxic relationships with their dogs. And it's how can we get in there and in the kindest way say, you need to change this, right? It's not going to work out.
Yes. And that's the thing. I feel like when you're in this business for a while, I do feel like people become jaded, right? And a lot of the trainers that I see them all the time on Instagram, of trainers belittling clients for not knowing why would they know? Why would they know?
One of my biggest pet peeves is not only are they belittling, I've seen trainers straight up call out clients by name. Mm-hmm. And it's if I was just an everyday person looking for a dog trainer and I'm watching your Instagram, I'd be I'm not going to go to that person, because if I do something wrong, they're going to call me out on Instagram. That's a lot of pressure.
Exactly. I mean, we just had this conversation in our session 2 seconds ago. Somebody walks in here, it doesn't matter what job they do for a living, I couldn't do their job. Why would I expect them to know about this? I spend every single day learning about these dogs and about the best way to live with them. And I've done that through years of trial and error, and a lot of errors, right? A lot. So I'm never going to tell a client that you should feel bad about the mess ups that you've brought in here with you.
I say to clients all the time, I'll tell them because you'll have those sessions where you can tell that they're getting frustrated and they're saying stuff like, oh, I just can't get this, or what have you. And I'll stop and I'll say, look, I've been doing this for years. we're trying to take all of that information and compress it down into like a 1 to 2 hour session. Like, give yourself a little bit of grace and know that it's just going to take that repetition and practice.
Yeah.
People want to nail it down that very first time. It's like, it's never going to happen.
Yeah, no, I'm really big on kindness when it comes to, because I want somebody to walk in here and go, okay, I feel comfortable telling you where I messed up. I feel comfortable being very honest and open with you. And I feel comfortable with that because I know that you're going to give me a training plan that I can succeed in. Maybe it's not going to be the way that I would do it if I took the dog on myself. But if it's a plan that they can do, then that's all I care about. If it steps forward in the right direction and it still leaves room for the human to be a human and not a dog trainer, then yeah, that's what we're going to do.
Absolutely. And that's why, coming here as a client, as someone who has dogs and wants the best for their dogs, I am totally on different ends here. Like we run a nonprofit, the Aussie Albies Foundation, and we have a rescue program together, Millie and I. And it's always, we get all kinds of different dogs. And when we're rehoming the dogs, we actually have to take into consideration what can this family handle in regards to continuing their training. So a lot of times we work really hard with these dogs. We give them really good, we give them really good behavior, change their behaviors, and we help them get used to the crate and to the place. And we work really hard on that. And the fosters really work really hard on that. And we send them to a home that may not be able to keep that up, or not, just doesn't want to. It's not their reality. Like, they want to party all the time. They're fine with dealing with bad behaviors, whatever. So we think also about the dog. Like, can this dog handle having that much wiggle room?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
so then that goes into matching with the right family. We get tons of applications, and they may seem great, but then that person it looks like they're not going to be able to offer that structure and the boundaries and the level of consistency that this dog has thrived with. And unfortunately, we just can't put this dog with this family because that dog cannot handle that much wiggle room. And then we're going to be right back where we started. So understanding the dog and their needs and, them as an individual is so big, especially when you're working with a trainer, and a trainer that doesn't shame you for what you can handle too, right? Because it's much about what your dog can handle as well as you. What can you guys handle together? So can you tell us what is your training philosophy? If you were to go more in depth about that, what are your beliefs and, what runs your business?
Well, we are more so a relationship-based trainer, obviously deeply rooted in dog psychology. So we start with dog psychology as the foundational, and then work on building that relationship up between the human and the dog. Because, like we said earlier, it is a lot of time it is like therapy, right? We're just kind of trying to work out, like you were saying, what does the dog need? Because a lot of people, they skip that part. They want their needs to be fulfilled, but then the dog's needs are just kind of like, whatever. Like, I don't need to walk you, or I don't need to give you structure or boundaries or any of that kind of stuff.
Or they just don't know. I mean, I tell people a lot, I feel like we've moved in a direction, like as a society, of how we see dogs and what we expect from dogs. And people forget, like, the whole reason we had dogs in the first place was to work for us. And now what we perceive as working for us is like, wait at home. So when we get home, we can cuddle with you and spend time with you. And for a dog, that's not fulfilling. And so it's reminding people these are animals with instincts, with a purpose. And so you have to respect that and find a way to fulfill that, because what a relationship is it's compromise, right? It's you get your needs met and I get my needs met in a way that fits for both of us. And so that's what we're always trying to find is, yeah, I mean, if the dog needs a lot of walks and maybe you're an older person, or you don't have the capacity to walk them all the time, then okay, what do we replace that with? Is it structured play? Is it treadmill? Is it like, what we have to find that? Because yeah, it's, even if the dog doesn't have severe behavioral issues, it's trying to help people understand the dog's perspective and what a fulfilling life looks like for a dog. And if you're a dog lover, then you would want to understand that.
Well, and that's like the therapy part of it too, of I mean, I get people that come in and they're using their dog almost as like a band-aid, or sometimes it's almost like in the way that some people use drugs, right? Like when they're dealing with coming out of like a domestic abuse situation, or somebody they know and loved has passed away, or I mean, all of these horrible things, and they're trying to get their relationship with their dog to make them feel better. And that's where it really for us becomes therapy, because all of the things in your dog's behavioral deficits, let's say, right, those are all huge clues into what you need to work on. That's like why our company is Mirror Image, right? It's because where your dog is falling short in your eyes, that's where you're falling short, right? That's either personally or in your relationship. But I mean, I love what you said about originally our relationship with dogs was they work for us, but now it's truly, I mean, there are people that use their dog as a drug, right? As like in replacement for alcohol, in replacement for drugs. It's a band-aid for a much bigger problem. And then the dog has a living being has to take the brunt of that, when a lot of times these people need actual therapy, right, to deal with their problems so they can show up for their dog in a way that they need, and rather than relying on their dog to fix their problem. I see that a lot, but sometimes, and the beautiful part of it is, most of the time, people, at least for me, I was the same way. People aren't willing to change unless their dog needs them to. And I truly, like, you couldn't have told me, because I dealt with a lot of depression, a lot of anxiety. I knew I was struggling, but I didn't want to change until I knew my dogs needed me to. And that's when I was like, okay, I've got to, instead of using my dogs to make me feel better, I have to get better so that I can make sure my dogs get better. And that's, I think, the thing that I love about my job is that I see dogs be this thing, this powerful catalyst to change people's lives, as long as they want to. And there's sometimes where they aren't, but the times where they are, it's worth it. Totally
and
worth
that's, I think, people will come to me and say, well, I want this dog to be my emotional support animal. And I always ask them, well, what does that mean to you? Oh, I want them to make me feel better. And I always tell them, in my opinion, an animal becomes emotional support because it, like you just said, it forces you to change the way you're living your life so that you can provide that dog with fulfillment, with everything that that dog needs, right? It's not like, oh, I want the dog to just lay on me when I'm sad, or cuddle with me. All these things, that's one of two ways it can go, right? If you want an emotional support dog, you're going to have a dog that's super fulfilled because you're doing it the right way, or you're going to have a dog that is super imbalanced because you're doing it the wrong way.
Exactly.
And I love that you said, what can we do? When you have a dog that needs that fulfillment and needs that exercise or whatever it may be, you're asking clients that maybe if they can't meet those, needs, you're kind of changing it to something else. Like, we can always find a way to fulfill our dogs, even if that's not going on 5 walks a day. Even if that means I don't have a backyard, a fenced in huge backyard that this hyperactive dog can run all day. And you can find ways to fulfill your dog without having to, provide them with these things that it's not doable for you. Coming from rescue, we have so many people that actually apply to adopt a dog. And recently they right there that they rehomed a dog because this dog had we had actually 2 recent ones that came in. I don't know why they came in back to back like this. And these 2 people that are applying for a dog that we have in our rescue, they recently rehomed a previous dog that they had, because one reason was the dog had separation anxiety, and the other reason was because the dog was hyperactive. And I'm like, okay, this person just didn't know any better, right? But when you truly, truly love your dog and you understand that dog and you want to, provide that dog with the best life, and you're going to look for ways that you can provide that, because it's not just one cookie recipe that you have to follow to make this dog being fulfilled. There's tons of different ways that you can fulfill your dog, and you can provide that structure, and you can make it work for you. And a lot of people don't understand that. And even in adoption application or profiles, we see all the time, this dog needs a fenced yard. This dog needs this and that, and all these things that's going to stop that dog from being adopted and finding a great family. And we talk to people all the time over the phone. There are things that this dog is going to feel better having, and those things you can easily provide. A lot of times it's the crate, and a lot of times it's learning how to do a structured walk, and a lot of times it's learning how to do place work. And we teach you how to do these things. We actually send a trainer out to their house, and they work with them before even passing this dog on. So we make a point to do the drop-off session for this dog, an introductory session is what I call it, because we're just kind of giving you the first things that you can kind of work on, and then we go from there. But many people they put their dogs in this box, and they feel like, okay, this is what this dog needs. I can't provide it, so let me pass it on to somebody else and get another dog. Let me see if this dog fits what I need, right? And it's
Or
not
just
about
deal
changing
with
yourself.
the behavioral issues, right? Like, or people are like, oh, well, I know that I'm not doing this, so I deserve this behavioral issue. Rather than when we had Molly on, we talked about Molly from Pizza Adventure Pack. I'm obsessed with her because she's all about fulfillment, right? So all about biking and hiking and all of these things that you can do with your dog. And I think one of the big topics that we talked about was getting curious, right? Like that's one of my favorite parts about owning a dog is, okay, what is going to be the thing that we enjoy doing together? And I think that there's a lot of times where when people are either older or they've got a busy family or whatever, crazy busy schedule, they don't get curious about, okay, well, I can't do this thing that I know that this dog is bred for, right? So I can't go out and get this dog out there herding sheep, right? But I can maybe see if this dog likes some structured tug. I can see if maybe, we can sign up for like Fast Cat or something like that. What can I do with this dog? And people don't get curious enough, I feel like, about what is it that can fulfill you, and I can also enjoy doing it, and I'm capable of doing it, because I get it. Some people just simply aren't capable of some things.
Yeah, 100%.
And now we had some questions come in from people from Instagram that we put a Dropbox there for them to put their questions in. And one of them actually wanted to know if their dog is 7 years old. Is it too late to change their behaviors? Are they too old? A 7-year-old dog. What would you say?
No, not at all. I think that adage of you can't teach an old dog new tricks is completely false. And obviously we're not talking about tricks here, but it's all about just setting patterns, really. And for dogs, because they live in the moment, whatever moment or picture that you're presenting to them eventually will become their norm. So it's just about being consistent with your dog and saying, okay, we're going to change the way we do the walk. Say you have a 7-year-old dog and he's pulling on your leash. You can definitely change up that pattern, and within a good amount of time, 1 to 2 weeks, you get that dog walking nicely right next to you. So it's nothing to do with age.
And I think one of the harder things is, we do like to think a lot about the way that the human mind works and human habit formation and then dog habit formation. So if somebody's had that dog their whole life, the challenge is really going to be you guys together have very set patterns. So not only does the dog have to change, which actually dogs are much quicker to change their patterns, but you
Dogs
have to
are easy.
change your patterns, right?
Yeah.
And that's the harder part. So we do provide people with resources when they're open to it about how the human mind works, how we change our habits, some of those more effective methods, even down to like some deeper stuff if people are into it. Because I think a lot of times, like we talked about a little bit, it's you're asking a dog to meet your needs. If you're doing that, there's a reason for that. If you're unable to separate that from yourself, there's a reason, and that's okay. Maybe there's some trauma there. There's some other things that need to be worked through. And we're not therapists, so we can't definitely work through that with you, but there may be some other things that need to happen there that's going to be beneficial for everybody involved. And so, it's really more about how capable are you of changing your habits? How motivated are you to change your habits? And we can provide all of that insight and help for people, but they have to be willing to do it. And I think sometimes it's easier to say, my dog's too old, I can't. They can't, I can't, right? And no, you absolutely can. You have to believe that you can. You can't sabotage yourself in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
You can't give yourself that kind of that out. And that goes back to the business name of Everyday Pack Leader, right? The whole purpose of being a pack leader is understanding that dogs operate in a hierarchical fashion. So we have to place ourselves as the leader. A lot of times we just elect ourselves the leaders, right? Without showing the dog that we are the leader. And so the dogs don't give a shit about elections.
Mhm.
They want you to show that you can lead them. And so I think sometimes people have kind of a hard time with that concept because the dirty D word in dog training, right? Dominance. Everyone thinks that it means you have to be like this tough alpha male, aggressive, like you got to beat the crap out of your dog. And that has zero to do with dominance. Dominance is just about being the most influential one. So when we were kids, our parents were the dominant ones over us.
Yeah.
And so that's one thing that we work on too with people is kind of shifting that perspective first, right? Like it's not mean to say that you're the dominant one over your dog who's the more submissive one to you. Once you do that, the dogs can then follow you. They'll have an easier time following you anyway.
Well, and I love that you said it's not, I mean, dogs don't care about elections because when it comes to leadership, what they're looking for is safety. For them, it's not about, okay, who do I think is going to be the best one to elect for student class president so that they decide the prom theme. It's
who bought
who
the
can
food,
I
who bought the
lead?
dog? Yeah.
Exactly. Who's going to lead me and keep me safe for the majority of my life, right? Like in a world that I don't understand because the dogs are not, this is not their world. This is not, I definitely think that there's a lot of people out there that are against that whole, even using the word dominance, that their excuse is, dogs are domesticated. Great. But domesticated doesn't mean human. You know what I mean? Like that doesn't, I get it. Yeah, they're domesticated, but they still don't understand that the vacuum is not a bomb or that the mailman isn't coming to rob us every single day. Right. And so that's where it's so important for a relationship to set it up for the dog to defer to the human. And yeah, in every single relationship, there's a leader and there's a follower. And in good relationships, those things can go back and forth, right? And good friendships, right? But when it comes to a parent and child, there's never a time where you wake up for it with a 3-year-old kid and you're like, okay, you decide everything that we're doing today. Because eventually that's going to lead you into something dangerous for your child or you, or embarrassing probably.
Right. And you might say, hey, you can choose where we go get ice cream. Right.
Exactly.
But I'm going to provide the structure for the rest of the day because that's my role.
Exactly. Yeah. You get to choose what it is, like our fun thing that we're going to do together, right? Or I know you well enough because I've taken an interest in our relationship and in you as a living being to know that the thing that you enjoy the most in this world is this ice cream place. So I'm going to go ahead and pre-plan that that's where we're going on our time for you, right? And that's what I do. With Kemper, it's Tug. With Brick, it's I don't know. Brick isn't, one of my dogs is not from planet Earth. So I'm sure there's some ritual on his planet that I haven't found out yet. But a lot of it is people think, oh, well, I want to be my dog's best friend. That's great. But you're not being a very good friend to them because you're not understanding who they are. You're trying to put them in this box. And that's where I think it becomes just so sad. I think that that's probably the saddest part of it, of a person trying to make a dog something that you can tell the dog's like, that's not me. That was their dog who just passed away. They're trying to make me that dog. That's the dog that they see on Instagram. They're trying to make me that dog. But that dog's like, I'm actually not into any of this stuff. Yeah. I want to go for a walk and not sit on the couch.
Yeah. And one of and I won't say that this is your opinion. This is definitely my opinion, but because I think it's maybe a little bit more edgy. But, when you talk about different types of training and force-free training and some of the arguments that are out there, the more I've thought about it, I'm like, owning a dog is inherently oppressive to some degree. Unless you open the door and a dog ran in the door and sat on the ground and said great, this is where I want to live. You have made a decision. You have a responsibility to an animal that you have chosen. to bring into your home. Like we talk about crates, people think crates are mean. Your house is a crate.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And if the dog can't handle the bigger crate and will eat something or hurt itself, then it is more kind and more compassionate to teach it how to relax in a smaller crate. So it's like helping people understand, like what you said too, like they're animals, right? They're not humans, they're animals. And yes, they can take on human qualities, and we want to have human-like relationships with them. And that's okay, as long as you still deep down understand this is an animal, it's a predator that lives in my house, that has a different set of perceptions of the world than I do.
Different wants and needs.
Yeah, and I have to respect that. That is my responsibility by bringing it into my home. Yeah, and honor that. And if I'm not, I can't blame the dog for having behavioral issues.
There's a comedy routine. I don't know who it was, but somebody who was talking about how basically dogs are like our hostages, right? Because like people will like open the door a little bit, like crack the door, and like, no, my hostage can't get out of the house because if the dog had a choice, it'd be running out in the middle of the road, right? Like a lot of dogs, right? But the ones that have good relationships, they don't. They stay with you, because you've set it up to be their leader. But I can't also remember where I read this, but I look at dominance as a relationship based thing, and it can shift and change based on the situation that we're in. So, for setting up this mic, Easton was the dominant one. You know what I mean? She knows a lot more about this than I do. For a lot of the podcast and everything that we have done, I mean, Andrea's the dominant one because I just sit here and talk. I mean, she does literally the rest of it. But when it comes to Easton's first day in the pack, I was the dominant one. I mean, but a good relationship now with a dog, we shift and change of, hey, what do you think about this animal? What do you think about this drill? And we kind of go back and forth. But dominance isn't like this. And I think it's probably the idea that we elect ourselves in this position rather than we see where the dog needs it. Right. And then we fill that position for them. I don't see it as something that I stick on my head and it's my position for the remainder of my dog's life. It's we shift and change where my dog needs me to show up for them. And a good owner is going to notice where that dog needs leadership.
Yeah. Well, like with our younger dog, we work on his, he's still reactive. We got him at 5 months. And I think for him, the most influential beings in his life were dogs. So now it's harder to communicate as a human to him, like, hey, now I'm the one leading you, right? But we've done a lot of work and he walks really well on leash. And so now he's allowed to walk a little bit ahead, right? Because I know that he knows what we're doing. He's got clarity in that situation. So I don't have to be the one to say, no, I'm up front and I'm walking you and I'm the leader always. Like, no, dude, like you're on break. Go ahead and walk out a little bit ahead. My only rule is just don't put tension on the leash. That's it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you can sniff around. You can do whatever you want within reason.
Yeah. And there's like with Molly, going back to Molly's episode too, there's different attributes that can shift and change that. Like for you, that might be perfect. But for Molly, who bikes with her dogs, she won't let even an off-leash hike, her dog go in front of her because when she's on a bicycle, she has to make sure that they're not next to her, they're behind her. So in case she turns or something like that, but it can be different in every situation. Like with Kemper, we do more off-leash stuff because I trust him in that we've got clarity there. But it's also because I know when I call him, he's going to come back to me. I know he will. But that can be different based on the things that your dog is clear on and the things that you do with your dog on a day-to-day basis. If your dog is still reactive on a leash, no, they should not be walking in front of you. But if your dog has clarity on, I don't have to deal with what's coming our way, absolutely. Why does it matter, right? As long as you can switch it on and turn it off.
Yeah. And going back to, dominance and alpha and all these things, I think a lot of the things about what steers people up, especially online, and they get so hung up on words, is the choice of words. And our generation specifically, they're so sensitive to word choices. It can mean, dominance can mean being the best friend to your dog because it's just how we choose the words. Alpha can mean being your dog's mom. It's like, how do you say those things? So if we say the exact same message, which is leading your dog, giving them guidance, you know, actually keeping them safe, being the person they look.
Parenting your dog.
So if you
Exactly.
choose,
Yeah.
instead of I'm my dog's alpha, you say I'm my dog's parent, you know, I'm my dog's mom. I
There's shirts that
choose,
say dog mom, right?
yeah,
Like people,
dog.
hats that say dog mom, but
Like,
we,
can we, you know, can we just, like, people in general, and especially online, and they don't realize it's all about the choice of words. Today I listened to a video of a guy that sat there with a camera on his face, and he looked real serious and meant business, and he's talking about how the alpha theory is, you know, not a thing, and your dog doesn't need an alpha, your dog doesn't need a leader, your dog doesn't need this, and if your dog has anxiety, that's just who your dog is. And I mean, the fact that there were
Poor dog.
so many people in those comments, like, finally someone who gets it, like, who's not going to make me dominate my dog, who doesn't believe on the alpha theory, on the pack theory. And when you say pack theory, automatically, like, people come on and they think you're so mean. But what if we change that word, right? Like, what if we say, I'm trying to be the best friend my dog can have. So if my dog is dealing with anxiety and I want to be their best friend, a best friend doesn't let their best friend deal with anxiety. They're going to sit there, they're going to understand what my friend needs, and I'm going to do everything I can to be that source, that outlet for my friend to become a calmer person. So when they're around me, they're not feeling anxious. So what if I say I'm my dog's, like I said, I'm my dog's mom, I'm his mom, and I'm going to do what my mom did for me. I'm going to teach them how to follow my lead, right? So how to trust me, to make decisions, and understand that I am here to keep them safe. So it's all about the choice of words, but the message is the same. We want our dogs to feel safe with us. We want to have a relationship with your dog that they don't feel like just running away every time you open the door. And they feel when you leave the house, you're not putting them in harm's way. So if your dog can't handle being in this huge crate, right, in this huge house, putting them in a smaller place, in a smaller room, in a smaller crate where they are actually confined to where they can't hurt themselves, they can't get into things, isn't that better for your dog? Isn't that you showing love and care and being a parent for your dog? So I think it's so big that we talk about these things, because, like, the choice of words, you can put two videos out there online and the same message, but, you know, people are so hurt about words these days. Like, you say a word that kind of touches people's nerves, and then you say the same message with different words, and it's the same thing here. We're
Yeah.
all here for the same reason. We love our dogs. We care about our dogs. We want the best for them. And if you don't, you're just selfish, you know?
Yeah, and I think like one of the problems that we've seen, you know, with a lot of dogs, especially ones that are more anxious, insecure, you know, who need more of that confidence and that guidance, is it, to your point about words, it feels like people have moved really far into this lane of like, I don't ever want to be uncomfortable, right? Like I want to make my whole life as comfortable and safe as possible for me. And in doing so, we've actually damaged our dogs, because animals, well, humans too, we're all really good at dealing with discomfort naturally, right? That's why if something scary happens, we shake afterwards. Or for dogs, they shake it off or they yawn, or like whatever. They have their ways of coping. Sometimes it's shaking or whining if they're really uncomfortable on place or whatever. And it's learning what the level is of appropriate discomfort and how to guide your dog through that, right? And so I think because people don't want to be uncomfortable anymore, we definitely can't handle our dogs being uncomfortable anymore. And so we shut down all these really natural, healthy processes that actually provide growth, you know, for both of us. And so, you know, now that's why we're seeing so many more issues around that. And then people saying, well, my dog's just anxious, that's just how they are, is really doing a disservice, because you can actually help them. But that means they're going to be uncomfortable, you're going to be uncomfortable, and you have to find a way to do that properly that you can handle. And people don't want to do that.
I think
What's about that?
subconsciously they might know that too, right? That
Yeah. I
they
mean,
can't
it's
handle
about
it.
that, like that kind of like the feel better versus get better. I mean, that's how it was for me. And I think that that's how it is for a lot of dogs. Of, you know, people are constantly trying to make their dogs feel better, but they're keeping them from getting better the more they try to make them feel better.
Yeah, that's how you reinforce the things that you don't like, the fear, the anxiety, all those problematic behaviors, people end up, unintentionally reinforcing them by doing the wrong things. And that's one of the things that if we even come, because we get a lot of people who reach out now, because we used to do a lot of fostering and rescue rehoming and things like that, behavioral rehabilitation. And so people will reach out because they know that we did that and say, oh, hey, can you rehome my dog? And the first conversation we always have is, are you open to training? We will give you a free virtual. We will, like, even for some people, we've given them free in person. We're like, please, if you are willing to keep your dog, we will help you. And don't worry about how much you can pay for it, and we've actually had some success with that. It makes us happy when people take us up on it, because sometimes they're like, no, I'm just done. But, it's really like, there's probably some key concepts you just haven't heard because they're not mainstream. And if we can just give you those little things, it might change everything. And in some cases it has.
Or there's concepts that you have heard, and then you go and you scroll and you see a person who tells you the exact opposite, and then that person was wrong. And
Right.
I can't imagine just being a dog owner, just a regular dog owner of a reactive dog or a dog with severe behavioral issues, and going, where the hell do I look for help?
I can.
Yeah, you were. Yeah, you were.
Yeah, Easton actually started her whole journey with, dog training because her dog was actually very reactive, and we talked about it in previous episodes. But now she has this understanding for reactive dogs because she's been through it with her own dog. So we always assign dogs to trainers. So a lot of times she gets the reactive ones in our program because she understands their mind. She knows the calmness they need, the guidance they need, the love they need. And one of our dogs, Rusty, who came from a shelter, and he was on the verge of getting euthanized because of his anxiety and how anxious he was. The shelter couldn't keep him anywhere because he was just hurting himself. He's a dog that's been working a lot with Easton, and she does the day trains with him. He graduated from that. Now he's in a pack of dogs when he goes to day camp. And they're working together, and they created that relationship. And for the few times that he's been with her, it's like once every other week or once every week, we change frequencies, but he looks at her so much for direction. When he sees her, he like goes for her. He's like, that's my human. That's the one I want to be with. So it's amazing that when you create that relationship with your dog and you give them that feeling of safety, how much they connect with you. And when you tell owners that want to maybe rehome their dog, and you offer them that guidance and you offer them the information that may shift that, and they don't take you up on it, it's, their heart was never in the right place. We do the same thing with our program.
It's totally disheartening.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's the one, I think, missing factor in a lot of types of training that there are out there is the relationship. And coming from like a client perspective, a average dog owner that had a reactive dog, I had used so many different types of training. The focus was always the tools. It was, e-collar, the prong collar, the slip lead. It was always focusing so much on like just the walk, the things that we all work on eventually. But the one thing that I think I really uncovered with Millie and with the psychology and relationship based training is the most important tool is the relationship. That's like that's the foundation for everything. Yeah, it's the pillar. Yeah.
Well, and sometimes, we've had clients who come to us and they say, I have multiple dogs. This dog is the problem. This is the dog that's going to get rehomed or put down. And we're like, can we please just come assess the whole pack, right? And we end up coming in and saying, actually, I think this dog is the problem. And if you change this, this, and this, and then they do it and everything falls into place, and they're like, oh my gosh, I would have put that dog down and they were fine. They were just reacting to this other thing. And I wasn't providing the leadership and the guidance that they all needed to behave appropriately. And so, yeah, it's scary to think of being someone who doesn't know and trying to get that information out there. And like vets will tell you to put dogs down. There's a lot of people who are very eager, to say like, here's this solution, when in reality, and then people say that being more alpha or more dominant is mean. And it's like, well, what's the truth? If you could do that and do it in an appropriate and respectful way, and then the dog can live a healthy, fulfilling life, or you just put them down because you're not willing to do those things. Like, what's the more cruel option?
Yeah. And that's going back to the Everyday Pack Leader name, and why we started doing this was to build that connection. I still do. She's 11 years old. She's our dog now, but before we met, I had this dog, and I had her since she was 6 or 7 months old, and I didn't know anything about training. Everything I learned about training was by watching The Dog Whisperer, and I did okay with that, And at the time too, I was struggling with alcohol and drugs, so I also needed to rehab myself in order to help this little pit bull dog that I had, still have, and it to me, it just, that connection was just so strong and so impactful that when we decided, like, oh yeah, dog training, we should definitely try that out. That's always been the goal, because I see all these people struggling with their dog and how just miserable everyone is involved, right? The dog and the human. And I just want to, I always just go to them and say, hey, like, wouldn't it be just so fucking awesome if you just had this rad life with your dog, and all you have to do is be the one that's in charge, is just to lead this dog and give this dog guidance. And if you're struggling with stuff, psychologically, trying to do that work so that you can better provide that stuff for your dog, like, wouldn't that be awesome? And I think most people get it,
Yeah, with Easton though, it wasn't up until like a year into knowing her that she said something, and it blew my mind. I think I've talked about it on the podcast before, but she was like, when you told me, I needed to get my dog off furniture, I needed to just create more boundaries in the house. What you were doing was asking me to give up my relationship with my dog as I knew it. That was my entire relationship with my dog, was the fact that in my house, when nobody was home, that's the only time that we could enjoy each other, because everywhere else sucked. Like we couldn't go anywhere else safely. And it blew my mind when you told me that, because I'm like, well, no wonder, like, I'm surprised more people don't walk away and be like, I can't do that. That's everything I know about my dog. So I never tell people like it's just this easy, because it's not. I mean, it's scary. You're jumping into this unknown, and why would you trust me? And you don't know me. I didn't know her. Like I walked away from that session thinking I bombed it, because I'm like, all I did was tell her to just do a little bit of structure in the house. And 2 weeks later, you were texting me like, he is so calm in the crate. We are taking the best walks we've ever been taking.
I'm quitting my job.
Yeah. Can I come work for you? And it worked out. But I get it. It's it's a huge ask. It's huge, but to us, and that's where I'm like, I try so hard not to get, I think it was so, it was meant to happen for me to go out and see Obi, her dog, and have Easton come in to give me that perspective, because that's truly where I'm like, I have to make sure I never get jaded, because the second I start to think that that's a simple thing, I can't be related to anymore. They can't relate to me, because I'm saying, just get your dog off furniture. Just, you know what I mean? Give some boundaries, start crate training. Like it's nothing. No, that's everything to them. I mean, that's the only place where they have left with their dog. And so I get it. It's a big ask. It's huge. But to us, it's simple.
I don't know how you feel about this, Millie, but like with my clients, I always remind them too that it's not a forever thing.
Oh, me too.
Because our whole thing is, and this is something that I learned through Jay Jack. I don't know if you guys are familiar.
I love Jay Jack. Yeah,
I love him. And it was is clarity through structure.
Yep.
Right. So you don't have to have structure, because I think that's what people are afraid of. Right. They're like, you mean for the rest of my life, I can't have my dog on the bed or on the couch? No. It's until your dog has that clarity and there's an understanding between the two beings that you can then do whatever you want with your dog. Like our older dog, she's just out and about right now, laying on the couch. And then she's like, well, I'm going to lay on the floor now. I'm going to go over here. And it's fine. She doesn't have any issues. There's clarity. We're good.
Yeah, no, I mean, my 12-year-old dog passed away 2 years ago now. She was on furniture. The only time I really ever took it away from her was when I could tell her back end was going out, and I needed to start getting her used to laying on the floor, so she didn't try to get up on furniture.
That's kind of where we're headed.
Yeah, I mean, that was it. But I had the relationship with her that I wanted. I trusted that dog more than anything. Like she was a better trainer than I ever was. She did my job for me. Right. But I mean, I never tell people it's a forever thing. Now I will tell people there are some dogs that are so sensitive to lack of leadership that they're going to need this their whole life, because if you try to give them a little bit of freedom, they take it on as a responsibility. But we don't know that until we do trial and error.
Yep.
Right. I mean, I also tell people that I have in my bedroom a no animal zone. Like, I want one room in my house, because I am a dog trainer and I do this for a living. There's one room in my house where there's just no dog hair unless I bring it in. Right. But that's a me preference. That's not, that doesn't have to be everybody. But I tell people that the structure is relationship based. So if I've got a good relationship with my dog, absolutely, I'm going to allow them on furniture. Absolutely, I'm going to allow them to walk ahead on me on a hike, or I'm going to allow them to not, even with Kempers, sometimes I don't enforce place as a boundary. It's just, even if I tell him to go to place, he can leave whenever he wants, because I know that he uses it as a coping mechanism. But that's because it works for my life, my dog, and that's our relationship and where it's at right now. But I am so careful with telling people the wiggle room that I do give my dog. And I had this as an idea for an episode of the podcast of the wiggle room, right? So where I have wiggle room for my dogs that I don't talk about in my sessions, where Easton might have wiggle room for her dog, where Andrea has them for hers. But I don't talk about it because I don't want people to go, oh, okay, then it's okay for me to do it with mine. We don't have the same relationship, right? I don't do it with my other dog, but I'm very critical in a healthy way. I feel like sometimes unhealthy, of my relationship with my dog. I'm constantly poking at it of, is this okay? Of, can I do this? And we still have a solid relationship, but a lot of people don't do that. They want to cover everything up and convince themselves that they have a healthy relationship so that they can have their dog on the couch.
Yeah. And few more questions here that we have. What is the hardest case that you've ever worked, and why?
Hardest case?
Like hardest client situation.
You don't have to like name their name.
But
you can also say pass.
No, it's okay. I'm trying to I think the hardest case may have been a dog that we worked with. We were helping a rescue with, and we got him to a pretty good place, and he got adopted. Sorry, I might actually cry on this one. And then he got sent back. So he got adopted, and of course, nothing was really implemented. He was a very sensitive dog. And so I remember they were saying like the dad would mess with him a lot. And
play with him. He'd take him out of the crate the wrong way, and then roughhouse with him.
He would roughhouse with him, and but he's a very sensitive dog. So one day he bit the grandma, which scared her. Obviously, he was a really big dog. He was like 90 pounds, maybe
100 pounds, yeah,
90, 100 pound pit bull. Beautiful dog. And then he bit her a second time. So then the rescue called, and they're like, hey, they're going to give this dog back. Can you guys take him back? And so we're like, all right, fine. We brought him back in, and we're doing the board and train. But we didn't realize the extent to which he was just like no longer trusting of humans.
Mm-hmm. And this was early. I mean, this was like one of the first dogs we worked with.
Yeah. So anyway, he ended up biting Nikki on the hand. And so we're like, oh shit, okay, this is like a whole different scenario. Worked really hard, got him on a muzzle, got him walking nicely on leash. I mean, we did a lot of work with him. Obviously built a bond. We had him for like 7 months. Right?
Yeah, the second time. And then one day we were getting ready to walk, and he just popped up and bit Nikki on the arm. Mm-hmm. And he came back down, and he was going back up for another go. He was going to maul me at that point. Yeah. Like, it was pretty clear he was going to try to kill me.
So I wrestled him down. I put him in the crate and just had him settle. And then we said to the rescue, like, okay, like something's different. And like, we can't handle this dog. Mm-hmm. Like, so sometimes as a trainer, you have to like come to that moment of saying like, this isn't a dog that I can help now. Mm-hmm.
Well, but he couldn't be homed. I mean, we knew.
No, he couldn't be
He
in a
was
home.
Really good with Javier, and we trusted him 100% with him. I mean, no issues, but he was like a one person dog.
Mm-hmm.
And outside of that, he just couldn't trust anybody. And I think he saw, it was almost like a rivalry, right? Like maybe that was part of it with me. And so since he was the only one who could handle him, that's impossible. I mean, he works, like it wasn't going to be possible to keep him.
Yeah. So in any case, the rescue sent him to, they set up a deal, like a sanctuary deal with somebody who said that they were going to keep him. And then we didn't hear anything from him after that, or anything about him after that, even though we were like, hey, how's he doing? Blah, blah, blah. So the suspicion is, because the last we heard was that he was going after, he was going after people. So more than likely they put him down, and that one's always hard for me because I know that I did my best, but I don't know. I still think about him, and I still get sad about him, and I still ask myself, like, could I have done anything different or anything better,
But what quality of life, right? I mean, even if he had stayed with you, what quality of life would that have been? Because anytime a person was around you, it seems like, right? Like he was probably on edge. And then what quality of life would he have had anywhere else? There's not that, like, you wouldn't have found that perfect home for that one person, one dog, and that person was never going to come in contact with any other person. That doesn't exist,
Yeah, that's something I have to remind myself when I start to feel bummed out about him.
You did exactly what you were asked to do. You worked with the dog, and then you said, actually, I feel like this isn't a situation where the dog's going to get better in. And that's what matters. Right? And there's a lot of trainers that maybe in a different environment, that dog would have thrived with you, and you could have gotten it through something, and then maybe it would have found this perfect home, but probably not. But a lot of trainers are too focused on their own ego to go, I actually don't have what it takes to not skill wise, but I don't have I don't have the skill or the environment or the setup or the pack or the other dogs or the family structure, whatever it is, in order to help this dog. But I think a lot of trainers won't admit that because they think that it makes them look bad. One of the most comfortable things I am with saying, I will say, I don't know, to my client's face. I don't know. I've never seen this before. Let's poke at it together. Let's figure this out together. Right. Like, this is different for me, but it makes it where I feel like the client feels like we're on the same page. We're on this journey together, but there's a lot of trainers that will keep a dog and do a board and train, what you were saying before, of like, you'll go out to a house with a pack of dogs and it's actually the other dog that's the problem. There's a lot of trainers. I mean, I think with Andrea, you brought Bubbles to a trainer that said, yeah, sure, I'll take him. I'll do a board and train with him. But they never even thought to be like, maybe I should meet the rest of the dogs at the house that he was fighting. Right.
Right.
And because it wasn't, I am biased towards Bubbles, but it wasn't Bubbles, right? Like Bubbles was doing the damage, but it wasn't him initiating it. Without anything else changing at the house, Bubbles would not have changed. But just taking that
thing. That's the thing, right? It's like, they usually do that. They'll take the dog that does the most damage. That was the case that she was talking about earlier. It was 2 Frenchies and a pit bull, and they wanted to get rid of the pit bull, but it was one of the Frenchies that was actually being rude.
Duh.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
And now they're like so happy they didn't get rid of their pit bull because they had her the longest. I mean, she's a sweet, sweet dog.
Very sweet dog.
She just needed them to step up a little bit and control the Frenchies, right?
They just sent us a video of them pack walking.
Yeah, she's pack walking all 3 now, which is super cool. And yeah, that was also an example where they had gone to another, like a training program facility. Yeah. And they're like, we already spent a ton of money. We've been doing a ton of training. It did not work. We are not interested in additional training. The dog needs to go. It's dangerous. And I was like, is she crate trained? Yes. Put her in a crate. She'll be fine. Let us come up there and help you. We won't charge you. Like, please just give us a chance. And it worked out really nicely. And the funny thing was she got in the crate. She was so happy. She's like, thank God I don't have to deal with them anymore. And I don't have to make my own decisions. And she was like, what? I'm like, I'm telling you, like, you'd be surprised.
Yeah. And like what you said about the pit bull that you really try to help in that situation, you guys did everything that you could, right? You did it to the extent that you could offer him the guidance, the structure, the boundaries. Like you checked all of the boxes before you finally said, I don't have what it takes to make this dog feel comfortable or safe or whatever it is in his mind that's going on, that I can't make it click. But I tried everything that I could. And in a lot of situations, when it comes to dogs like that, or more difficult dogs or dogs that are not necessarily easily understood, it's people don't check all the boxes. They don't try. Like they're back, they want to be in their comfort zone, like we were talking about. They don't want to do things that will require a level of dedication and consistency coming from them. And all of a sudden, it's this dog is not right for me. So if you get to a point with in your relationship with your dog, I mean, check all the boxes, right? Try, like, do everything that you can to the level of effort that you can provide, and before you decide and make a change, the life changing decision for your dog. So I think it's
Yeah,
really
and
big for
and
people to
and to
try.
that point too, I think the silver lining with that dog was that it put me into a constant state of learning.
Mhm.
I was like learning from everyone and anyone that I could, and I think that that's something that dog owners should also consider is if you're working with your dog and you're checking all those boxes, but still something's not working, and maybe look at the methodology that you're using and break away and try a different methodology. I think people get so locked into this is my methodology, and that goes with everything, right? People are like, oh, I'm only obedience, I'm only dog psychology, I'm
Mhm.
only force free, I'm only this. Do it all, run the gamut, and find the one that actually works for your dog.
Yeah, I think the only caveat I would say to that is that give each one a solid chance. Because I
100%.
think
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
have a lot of my clients that will all be in the middle of, we have 4 sessions on the books. I'll come out, third session, and they'll tell me, I saw this thing on TikTok. I did this. I'm trying this. I'm like, but that's actually going exactly opposite of what we were talking about. Now
Yeah.
our dog is more adrenalized. So make sure you definitely run the gamut. Absolutely. I mean, that's the fun part of, you can find things that you enjoy with your, like, Kemper does obedience. He loves that, but I'm not an obedience trainer. I'm a
Hmm.
psychology based trainer, but I love to learn obedience with him because he likes to do it. But I think a lot of times people will go, oh, well, if it didn't work for me in 1 week, then it's
Hmm.
not, this isn't the right method. No, some of the
Yeah.
stuff takes 6 months, a year, sometimes more than that. But definitely give each one a fighting chance. But don't be afraid to be like, this isn't working. I've tried this. I really have checked all the boxes in this methodology. Now nothing has changed, or it's only changed, this much. Now I feel like I have really given this all I've got. Let's switch and try something else or sprinkle something else in here.
Well, especially if you have a really pushy dog. I know sometimes we have to tell people, like, when you start implementing more structure and you change things, it's going to get
Mhm.
worse before it gets
Mhm.
better. You're going to have this moment where you're like, what happened? And I'm like, the
Hmm.
Uh-huh.
dog is testing you.
Yep.
They're challenging you. Just stay the course. And I promise
Yep.
it'll get
They're
better.
I
like, are
tell
you sure about
people
Yeah.
all the time that when I can tell the dog is pushy in the first session, I will tell people, now you're going to go home and your dog is going to convince you that I have no idea what I'm talking
that?
about.
Hmm.
Totally.
I
Yeah,
promise you I do.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then just to add to that too, I just want to say that I I always recommend starting with dog psychology, right? That's where I started my dog training journey, and it hasn't failed me.
It's a good
And
foundation for
it's
everything.
a really good
Mhm.
foundation, because I think that's what's missing in a lot of other methodologies, is that foundational relationship based understanding between the human and the dog. So I just wanted to throw that in.
Absolutely. I agree with that. I got really lucky to start that way, but in terms of trying to figure out what works for you, like we've been talking about this entire episode, don't discredit other method of training. Understand your dog for who they are and try to offer that, whatever it is, to them, whatever they need to them. So I think it's awesome that a lot of the times, in psychology based, you just want to understand the dog. You're not saying what's wrong and what's right. You're not trying to discredit different methods of training. You're really genuinely just trying to understand that dog for who they are and trying to figure out what they need. That's, kind of what unifies, it should unify all of the trainers is I love this dog. I want the best for this dog. And if you don't have a trainer telling you that, if what they're doing doesn't work and they're genuinely telling you, like, I think I don't have the resources to give you, maybe try a different method. If they're just going into this dog, I can't, it's like this dog is broken, then run, because it's never that way. You have to figure out what works for you and what works for your dog. But I think this in this episode, we covered so much, and I'm so thankful that you guys came on. I love to share different views and points of view with our listeners. It's been a year now that we started this podcast. Actually, I just got a notification from Instagram when they tell you to share a memory. So it was like one of the first pictures we took recording our first episode.
Oh,
and yeah,
Millie made me come and just sit in the corner, so I could be like her support animal for
there,
it.
just trying to.
So I don't have an emotional support dog. I have an emotional support Easton. So yes, I made her come and sit in the corner because I was so nervous.
We were so nervous, but we created such a good community. We've gotten so many messages since then from people that generally loved what we had to say. And I'm so thankful that now you guys are part of that journey that we're on with the podcast.
Us too.
And
Us too.
I love your page, your Instagram, Everyday Pack Leader. I love how you actually go about understanding the dogs. I was watching one of your highlights, and it was the dog that was really afraid of going in the crate because his prong collar got stuck in the crate one day. And you wrote there, you said, I had to be very patient and not pushy with this dog because I understood where he was coming from and I didn't want to ruin the crate for him. And I love that mentality of understanding the dog and trying to go in the pace that they need and start instead of trying to get them to an end point, because you wanted to show that client or whatever, like, look what I did. But you're just taking it slow and understanding the dog and trying to figure out the trauma he's been through and what he's thinking and give him a different view of that crate. So I love that so much. But if you can tell us, you are on Instagram, Everyday Pack Leader. Are you on other social platforms that people can follow you?
Well, I'm on Facebook. Just my name, Javier Hernandez. However, I don't really do much on there. I'm really on there because I'm a part of some Facebook groups, so I kind of had to be on Facebook. So Instagram's the best place to see what we're doing and to reach out if you have questions or anything like that. And I just wanted to add on to what you were just saying, Andrea. There is a quote, and every one of my clients is going to probably roll their eyes because I say it to everybody, and it's infinite patience offers immediate results.
I love that.
Yeah, it's I want to say it's Wayne Dyer, but yeah, it's you just have to be patient. That's it.
I love that. I was trying to think of 3 words to start my year with, right? The new year. Like, I want to bring 3 focus words for me. And 2 words that were really big for me is, focus and consistency. Like, those are the 2 that I feel like I need to work on, is staying focused and being more consistent in like every aspect of my life. And I was trying to figure out a 3rd word. I'm like, what is that 3rd word that's going to drive me and help me make better decisions and just help me become a better human? And I think patience. That's, I think, what I was missing.
I think so too, Andre.
Right? Patience. Like, I think that's my 3rd word. And I was thinking about that so much for the last few weeks. I'm like, what's that word? And I couldn't find one that really, make me feel like I need to work or, would change things for me, generalize in every aspect. And I think patience is really big because if you don't have focus or consistency or patience, what can you achieve? Right. I think those are 3 really good ones that I can start my year with. So thank you for sharing that quote.
I always
That brought
say,
it
like,
all
people-
together.
We
for me.
ask our dogs to do a lot of things that we can't do, right?
Yeah.
So like if it's place work and that's like, I need you to just sit still and
And
calm
cope.
down. Like how many people
no.
can just sit still and calm down? Like
Not
very
me.
few. So
Exactly.
it's like, think about, like these are good things for us and our dogs. And we could do them
Mhm.
together, right?
Mhm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you guys are based on, you are in
We're
California?
in San Diego, yeah.
Okay, perfect. So do you do virtual sessions or are you mainly in person?
In person, virtual as well. Since the business got started in LA, I actually still go up to LA and Orange County as well.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Awesome.
I get a lot of questions, or we do as the podcast on the podcast page for referrals for LA. So that's perfect if you're willing to drive there.
I am willing to drive there, and I also know a lot of great trainers in LA too.
Oh, perfect.
So I'm
Okay.
willing
Well,
to
then
refer. So yeah,
I'm sending them your
definitely.
way.
Awesome.
Perfect. All right, you guys. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And if you guys want to follow Everyday Pack Leader on Instagram, that's the best way to get in touch with them and schedule a session. But we're so happy that you came on, and we are excited to share this episode with our listeners. So thank you so much for being part of our episode. And Millie, are you going to help me close here?
Oh, no.
Don't forget.
Practice makes progress.
There you
Practice
go.
makes progress. I forget it every time. It's on my shirt.
Yes, that's our closing line. We close it that way. So thank you guys.
Make sure to follow us on Instagram at Think Like a Dog Podcast and follow at Mirror Image Canine for training tips. If you have any questions, please reach out to us via email at info@thinklikeadogpodcast.com.